We have an excitement announcement. Like, what did you do, really? Spam? Or like, ha, 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 look at this idiot, right? Like, nobody takes emails like that seriously, and nobody takes your company seriously. Did you ever get an email like this? Where it's like a broken link to a resource? Did you ever buy anything like that? No. So imagine your clients are like a funnel. They get an email from you, they go to your website, they sign up, they start paying money. So you just lost everyone at the start of a funnel. So in this presentation, I will teach you how not to do this. We're going to look at different examples of testing emails, because there are different ways of actually sending an email. Okay? At the end, I'll throw in a little bit of visual testing as well, just to make sure everything is perfect. You can find everything about me online, maybe a little bit too much, but I have videos about testing, I have a blog about testing, and all the tools that I write, sometimes I'm thinking, this would be a great startup. I can make money. And then I'm thinking, no, I'm too lazy. I'll just put it as open source. So everything I'm showing today is open source. Example application, right? User comes to your page, they enter the username, the email, and they say, yes, I'm interested in your project. You email them the confirmation code, right? Because you want to confirm the email first, because you don't want any bots and all the spam accounts. The email the user gets looks something like this, right? It might have a unique confirmation code. It might have a button that, if you click, has to go to the right place and fill the confirmation code. Or maybe it has to go to the local hosts, whatever, and then the user fills the confirmation code. So how do you test this? Right? Identify. Like, we all got that email yesterday or today in order to sign up. OK, how does that email get to us? Because if we know how it gets to us, we know how to test it. The email is not sent by your browser. You only fill the form on your browser page with your name, email. It gets posted to your backend API, your server, which uses SMTP protocol, which is actually older than HTML and HTTP by like 8-10 years. So that SMTP server can send it to another SMTP server that can get all the way until that user, the recipient, is found, and that email just stays there until the user checks it using a different protocol. So sending emails, if you do it yourself in your backend API using Node.js, is extremely simple. Very simple, right? Just grab Node mailer, configure the host and the port, maybe sometimes authentication, and just say, hey, send mail. And all you need is like from address to address, which could be complicated, right? Because you can have BCCs and attachments. You need the subject line. And you need two things. You need plain text body of your email. Because don't forget, some people do not use HTML clients. And you also can send now HTML email that things like Outlook, Gmail, and even your phone will open. Now, if you want to receive an email, especially during testing, the simplest thing is to spin your own SMTP tester server. Look how simple it is. You just start it locally, you bind to an event, and every email that arrives to that address, you can get it. So the easiest thing, if you want to test your email to make sure it works correctly, but it contains the right text, but it contains the right HTML format, is to point your backend API. If you can spin it up like this, with like, hey, send those emails, like right here, is to do this. You take environment variable, SMTP host, and you say localhost. And if that SMTP server is running, then you will get all the emails. They will not go out to the outside world. They'll go to your machine. OK, but this is just the bare minimum. This is not the whole workflow. You just pointed at the different SMTP server. If you want to test this, right, you need other things. You need to be able to open the browser. You need to be able to enter the email. You need to be able to click the button. Then you need to be able to get that email from the test server and confirm that it actually works and points back at your confirmation. OK, so let's test this. Not surprisingly, for people who know me, I'm using Cypress IO, which is the best open source, no limitation, end-to-end test runner. If you don't believe me, just ask Tomasz, he will tell you. If you don't believe him, just ask Gil. If you don't believe Gil, then I don't know who to believe anymore. But the easiest thing is, if you want to do end-to-end testing in your browser, is to install it using npm, which downloads a binary built for your operating system. If you run on Windows, downloads Windows binary, and so on. It's completely open source project. There are no limitations. It's MIT licensed, so you can use it at your organization. You don't have to pay a cent to anyone. And if you are at this conference, and I believe most of you are at this conference right now, tomorrow I'm giving a workshop. I'm not getting paid for it, right? It might be paid as a ticket, but if you want to know the basics, come tomorrow. OK, so here's how we're going to use it. Everything outlined in blue is what Cypress can do for you during the testing. So let's start on your, I want to say, right. When you start Cypress, it starts a node process. That node process can actually spin SMTP test server to receive all those test emails. And then Cypress opens a browser, either a built-in Electron, or it finds Chrome or Firefox on your machine, and it can control it. So you can control sending the email and then checking the email. Here's how a node side. You spin SMTP server, and you add a little thing saying, hey, whenever someone asks, you can give them the last email for that particular user. So you just accumulate all the user emails, and then you can return them. Here's how a front-end test looks for Cypress. And I know this can be intimidating. But let's kind of step through it, and you will think it's the easiest thing since sliced bread. So first, you visit the page. You find the name field. You type Joe Bravo or Gleb Bahmutov or whatever test name you want to use. You type the email. It doesn't matter because we're going to catch all the emails right now, right? And then we click Submit. OK, so we sent the email in the browser. Now it went to our backend API. And where did it end up? In our test server, in our object that we can now check using getLastEmail. So now we got this object. An object contains plain text and HTML. First, let's check plain text. Don't forget, when you're checking emails, you have to confirm the plain text and HTML. Otherwise, you will never know that half of your users are broken. OK, so we'll find your confirmation code is something. It should be a string. And then we go back, because we are controlling the page. We can go back to that page, enter that code that we just got from that email, and make sure it's successful. And this is how it runs in reality. This is a browser controlled by Cypress. It enters all those emails and names, clicks confirm, finds from the email the code, right? And you can debug each step of this process, right? Like I'm hovering over each command on this side, right? And this is what the program has done. But you did not come to this conference to test plain text emails, have you? No, you're interested in HTML, the real thing. In this case, we begin exactly the same way. We go to the page, we enter all the information, we get the object from the node process where we catch all the emails, and then we get its property HTML. Now we get HTML text. And here's the beautiful thing. We are controlling the browser window. If you have a browser window, you can just take its document object and write new HTML, like replacing everything there. with HTML that you just received as an email. And then you can validate it as a normal page. OK? So this is how it looks. We fill everything. We get HTML. Boom, put it in a browser. You see the email the user has got. We click on a button in the browser. And we go to correct page. We put the code we found from the email, and it's correct. And we can confirm everything ourselves as developers. How cool is it to be a developer in 2021, right? It's the easiest job ever. Now, I'm using this project to actually create the email myself in this case. I'm using Mazel, which is like Tailwind for emails. And the markup is very convenient, because I can put all the data IDs, everything. So I can find the button. I can find the code. In this case, it's pretty easy. Another thing I can do, I can save a screenshot of a browser at each step. My first step was opening a page. My second step was the email. My third step is the confirmation. So if I add size screenshot commands, I can see what has happened. This is my first screen. This is my email. This is the confirmation. We can store them somewhere. So when your manager comes in, it's like, why does the email look so bad? You're like, no, look at this. The email looked good, right? It's something else went wrong. OK, this is probably unlikely to be that simple in your case, because you don't want to send the emails yourself. Because sending emails is complicated. You probably are using company SMTP server, maybe third party, with spam detection, all the blocks, and so on. So in that case, you cannot just switch your backend API and point at yourself. In this case, you really need to open a test account. OK? Now, this is how you would use a SendGrid to send email. It's pretty much the same. You just use not mailer, but you point at external host. But what you really need in this case, because you cannot catch those emails anymore, they are sent by SendGrid somewhere, is ethereal accounts or test accounts. Now, a lot of people are trying to use their company email accounts. Maybe they create a test account, like a single account, and they use it for everything. Stop doing it. You don't want to do that, because it becomes a mess. You get this confirmation email. It might be from a different test. It could be from a human user. You want to create an email account just for each test, so you know what exactly goes there. So is it difficult to create ethereal accounts? It's a single line. You get Node Mailer, which I already shown, for sending emails. They have a built-in service, but they provide, out of goodness of their hearts and ad money, where you can create test account boom, like that. So now you have completely separate account from anything else. You can actually fetch emails from that account in Node, which I'm doing right here. The test is absolutely the same. There is one detail, I'll come back to that later. We're getting the last email for a user, and we immediately assume it's going to be there. When we actually ran email locally, that usually was true, right? As soon as we click confirm, get sent, we catch it immediately. But now there is a third-party service involved. And every time there is a third-party service involved, there are delays. Nothing on the internet happens instantly. So this could take seconds or could take minutes. But we'll deal with this later. But here's how it looks. Look at the email right now. It's a completely random email created just for this test. And look at the test. The test fails, right? Because I clicked confirm, immediately went to the test account and said, hey, give me the last email for that user. Well, guess what? There was no email yet. It was still empty, because it kind of goes through the tubes of the internet all the way, probably through some of the startup and big companies. Maybe it goes through your company, and you know who you are. You're not very good at developing, so the emails get lost. And then it has to retry sending it. Good thing the retry mechanism is built into every internet service. But just assuming that by the time you check the email is there, it's a wrong assumption. luckily for you, I'm here. So I wrote a little utility to redo and retry commands like get me the last email, which returns an object on null. So if it's null, Cypress is object fails, and it retries getting email after 5 seconds, up to 1 minute. You can control all these parameters. Okay? So you can really retry getting the last email for a user, even if you use very complicated path for sending emails, which could be a case if you use microservices and external providers that actually have queues of their own. And this is how it looks when it runs. Again, random email. First time I'm checking, nothing. Then it waits 5 seconds, checks again, like right now. Nothing. Waits 5 seconds, and I think next time it will fail. Come on. Yeah, OK, worked. And now we got the email. The actual email we sent through a third-party SendGrid provider. We put it in a browser so we can see it. Clicked on a button. We went to the right URL. There was a code. Everything is perfect. Literally, I can go home. Everything is fine. Unfortunately, it's not that simple, right? Again, sending one email, you probably can code SMTP sender yourself. Sending a couple of emails in your company, you can probably just use SendGrid, but write the emails yourself and use SendGrid to distribute them. But when you have a lot of emails, especially if it's controlled by marketing, who is here from marketing department? OK, I can speak the truth then, right? So the marketing, no matter what system you give them, will completely screw it up, right? They will start writing emails using, what you see is what you get providers, kind of like this. So they'll insert all colorful blocks. They'll put, template variables like dear username. They will forget to put default value, right? They will completely change. You will tell them, put username all lowercase. In a month, a new person will come in, and they'll change it to camel case. And they're like, oh, looks better, right? So, you send an email the same way. When you use dynamic templates, instead of sending the email, you just say, here's my template ID, and here are all the variables. Now, if someone came into the template and changed username from all lowercase to camel case, what happens? Right? The classic mistake of missing data, where it's little comma after the space. Okay? So how do we prevent this from happening? We can still use ethereal emails, right? Even though we're sending the emails using third-party service, we're using templates. At the end of the day, SendGrid will take all your data, will take the template, put the data in, and it will send it as a normal email. So everything I've shown before still applies. OK? The problem becomes a little bit different. When you code emails yourself, you're doing it wrong. And you're doing it wrong because you're not testing on all different email clients, right? The way your image or your markup is rendered in Outlook is completely different from Chrome email client on Android. And don't even get me started on all different Android versions and iOS versions, right? And all possible operating system clients. So what SendGrid and other providers do, they actually test their markup across devices. Unfortunately, the way they do it, they pick lowest common denominator for HTML, which means weird tables. Literally, look at this markup. Yes, it will render probably correctly on a bunch of devices, on say 95% of all email users. Unfortunately, if you try to actually validate that email in a browser saying, look for confirmation code, look for that button, it's very hard to find because the markup is absolute garbage. OK? So what do you do in this case? Well, you can kind of like look at text only. Instead of thinking, oh, there'll be a button with ID or data attributes, the most you can say, there'll be some text. The text will be like enter the confirmation code. That's all you can guess. But you can say enter the confirmation code, get the full text, which will have a code after it. So here are commands, split the text, get the last word, right? And now you have a code. Because you cannot select that text any way else. But here's something better, right? Our emails are not just text. Our emails are colors, logos, background graphics, company branding. Everything has to look exactly right. You don't want to validate just by using text. You want to validate visually. So that's where visual testing comes in. Unfortunately, in this case, Gil, for you, avert your eyes. I'm using Percy. So remember, I took a couple of screenshots before? So instead of using built-in size screenshot that just saves the image, in this case, I'm using third-party plugin. So it's Percy snapshot. And so what this command does, the first time it runs, it will take the screenshot of that email in a browser, and it will save it on the cloud. A month later, the same test runs. It takes the screenshot, and then compares that screenshot to previously saved and approved screenshot. But you say, like, yeah, this is a good email. And if they match, no problem. Your email is correct, nothing has changed, no layout problems, the colors are the same, your brand is there, everything is fine. But if there are any changes, text, layout, any CSS styling issues, it will be flagged because pixels will be different, and the test will fail. So it's very convenient to see it because yes, your email has confirmation code, it went to the right page, everything is fine. But visually, there were differences. So you caught like change of color. So this is how it looks the first time I run it. It even creates different responsive designs. So you can see how your email renders on mobile versus desktop. So everything is good, right? People who are leaving, they will not know that there is a secret or a problem. So here's my email, right? So I took screenshot of registration page, I took screenshot of the email. It's all good, except for one thing. My emails include dynamic items. So things like test name, like Joe Brother, is the same. I can control that from my test. But things like confirmation code, things like the button titles, they all will change with every test. And every time you do that, you will produce different HTML. If you produce different HTML, it will render as different image. And when you compare different images, there'll be pixels that are different. And you don't want to ignore that, because it might be actual difference. This is how it will look if you try to do visual testing for your emails day to day. You'll be like, oh, these codes are different. So here's the trick you do. You first confirm that the code is present. You confirm that the button is there. You grab the code, you grab the URL, whatever you want. After that, you take that button or that link that has a unique code, and you replace it. You replace it with like ABC123. Right? You already grabbed it. You will confirm that it works. But in HTML, you replace it with something that's always the same. And then you take a screenshot. So this is my email. I know it works because I grab the actual code, I checked the button. But in a visual testing, it will always have ABC123, so there are no pixels that will be different. And then you can sleep happy because it always will be the same visual email and not accidentally broken when someone else in a different department, right, in a different city, or even different company sometimes, right, accidentally changes the template of your email, and, for example, all the names are missing, or all the products are missing, or so on. OK. time to finish. Please test your emails. Even tiny mistakes in the email is like your face of your company. They start you on the wrong foot. They make you look unprofessional, right? If you're not testing your emails, you're probably not testing your website very thoroughly. You probably don't do a good job. So it makes you look unprofessional. Do not use Google or any of the actual email test providers. They will actually put checks to prevent test accounts. Prevent like robots and so on. Just grab a ethereal email, use that, and forget about it. And finally, don't just assort the text of the email. It's very important for the whole email to look good, because the modern emails are style-rich, and visual testing is a perfect tool for doing it. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you.